Okay. I'll just see that there's a few people joining at the moment, guys. So we'll get started very, very shortly. Good afternoon to those people that have just joined. Thanks very much for spending your lunchtime with me. It's very much appreciated. The sun is shining outside, so you could be outside on your lunch break, but you're here with me. So very much appreciated. Very shortly, and just for a sort of a bit of a heads up, I'm going to go through the presentation very shortly, but we're going to open the questions right at the end. So if anybody does have any questions, then of course I'll open the floor up. I'm being assisted today by Kristen, so Kristen will help sort of filter the questions, etc. So. Yeah. All right. Let's get started. I'm sure there will be a few more joining as we go, but I think as most of you are going to be joining us on your lunch break, I just want to make sure that we're quite prompt. So let me introduce myself to begin with. My name is Neil Dimmock. I'm the co-founder of London Pilates Academy. London Pilates Academy was founded around about 5 years ago. So it was a COVID startup. During that time, we've delivered Pilates education. We are very much focused on Pilates education. My background personally comes from working within the fitness industry itself. So I was working within the fitness industry as a personal trainer before I started to migrate towards Pilates. I've been in the industry now, just so that you're aware, for about 30 years. So it's been quite some time. I did the math a little while ago, and I was actually surprised myself how long I'd been in the industry for. Much of that, as I've suggested, has been in Pilates. So Pilates I began in just a little after the 2003, to be exact. So I've been in sort of teaching for quite some time. I've run studios personally, so I myself have run my own Pilates studio. I've been a part of other large organizations at sort of varied degrees, everything from a freelance trainer right the way through to employed, studio manager, education lead, so on and so forth. So there's a little bit of experience there. So just to give you a bit of an idea of my background. What I want to talk to you all today about is, as it suggests at the moment on the screen, is your Pilates instructor career. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to assume that many of you, and it could be all of you, I don't know your background, are looking at possibly becoming a Pilates teacher. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and sort of lean into that a little bit more. I will also assume that some of you won't be qualified. So you'll be looking for an education provider. So I'll lean towards that. Towards the latter phases, I'll start to sort of, branch out into, creating a brand for yourself and sort of moving forwards within the industry. So for those of you that are currently teaching, you might sort of, you might gain, I'm hoping that you'll gain some help in that direction. So let's begin. What we've done is we've broken this particular presentation up into 4 sections. Sections 1, 2, and 3 are for those that are sort of migrating towards a Pilates career or a teaching career in Pilates. So the first one is why become a Pilates instructor. That one might seem a fairly obvious answer to that particular question for some of you. But what we recognize in particular at LPA is we recognize that there are very different reasons, and essentially, there could be somebody who's changing career, who wants to supplement their income, who could be fresh out of college or fresh out of university and looking for a career in a specific role. So there are varied people have varied reasons. So why become a Pilates teacher? or instructor, as this suggests, just kind of, breaks it down a little. Who should train as a Pilates instructor? What I'm going to go through is I'm going to go through sort of the skill sets in which are very much transferable. And there are some obvious ones and there are some less obvious skill sets. So for those of you, a question that I get asked quite regularly is could this be a career for me coming from a marketing background, for example, where I don't have as much any qualifications in the fitness world, and I don't have a huge amount of know-how when it comes to teaching a class, but there are some less obvious skills that can be transferred from a majority of careers. And I don't think I've come across a career where there are no transferable skills. The journey to certifying. So that one in particular might help those of you that have started your search currently, because it gives you some do's and don'ts. It gives you some things to look out for, some things to kind of swerve, questions to ask if you're currently shopping around. I'm hoping that helps with regards to sort of pointing you in the right direction. And then as suggested, number 4 is kind of, it broadens it a little. So it opens it out to those people that are currently teaching. So building your career after qualifying. What does that look like? And things have changed a lot and over the years, over the decades that I've been involved. And, I've been on either side of the desk, as I like to say. I've been the person that's hired teachers or instructors. I've also been on the other side where it's been me auditioning for a role. So I can kind of see it from both sides. So I'm hoping to, again, point you in the right direction with regards to sort of building your brand and building your career after qualifying. So let's start with why become a Pilates instructor, which seems the most obvious of them all. These are a few reasons, and I'll kind of delve into just briefly each one. And the first, I think, is probably the one of which a majority of the hands go up when I ask the group in front of me, why a Pilates teacher? Flexible and self-directed income seems to be the sort of the largest response in respect of becoming your own boss and working your own hours. I would like to say I wish it was as easy as that from the very start. It's often not. I'll talk about that a little later. But in the long term, and if we consider these to be kind of long-term objectives, each one of these sort of remain true. So if your long-term objective is to have flexible and self-directed income, well, being a Pilates teacher is a great way of doing it. Rising demand. Now, you are probably migrating towards being a Pilates teacher because you can see there is such a demand for Pilates teachers, and the number of studios in which are opening, in particular in London. I won't take for granted that you're all, and you are likely all not from London, but in particular in London, over the last decade, Pilates studios have been, on the up and up. And as a result of London only being so big to hold so many Pilates studios, we're now starting to see Pilates studios pop up in the home counties, in the north, on the south coast. We're now seeing more Pilates studios as we interact with our partner studios in Europe. We're now starting to see more Pilates studios in Europe. So the number of Pilates studios in which are rising is incredible, and as such, as a result, we're having now the greater need for Pilates teachers, for qualified Pilates teachers, might I add. Fulfilling work. And again, I wouldn't have been in this role or this career if I hadn't have enjoyed it. I thoroughly enjoy helping people on a day-to-day basis. I think, if anything, Pilates teachers and trainers alike often play down their role a lot. And when I stand in front of a group, I welcome everybody to the course, but in particular for making a positive choice to influence positive decisions that people make. And you as a Pilates teacher are going to influence someone's lifestyle. They no doubt arrived at our particular courses because they've been inspired by somebody to do so. And that person has quite likely given them or been the catalyst to to help them make positive decisions in their lives. So, being just a Pilates teacher or being just a trainer for me doesn't exist. You'll be an influence on somebody else's life, no doubt, as somebody has become an influence on your life. And again, those fulfilling, or let me change that sentence slightly, zooming out, is those choices of which that individual is now making has led them to better relationships with their own body, with other people, maybe their job. So it's such an impact of which you have over people's life. It might be to deepen your own practice. Now, this is a slightly abstract one in the respect that underneath I've just sort of explained remain curious and what does good look like. They're quite abstract things, really. So let me explain them very briefly. Is that the remain curious means that continue to explore. I think that when we look at the original 34 exercises, that's not where Pilates starts and ends. Joseph Pilates went way beyond the original 34 exercises, the repertoire that you find within barrel, within chair, within reformer, the versatility of Pilates. Now, Pilates is being delivered in on various platforms. It's being integrated into things of which you see in Peloton, or things that you see in a body pump class or in PT. These particular kind of influences have just gone wider than Pilates. So, remain curious, find out what other things Pilates has to offer, opposed to, just the immediate 34 exercises that you're likely to encounter within your mat qualification. What does good look like? What do you personally enjoy? So when you go to class, no doubt many of you have been to classes, and many classes. What is it that a good trainer indicates to you? What sort of things do you resonate with? Because those types of things are essentially things that you're going to carry through to your own teaching practice. So deepening your own practice is, physically is extremely important, but also what does that look like? What do you stand for as a brand? What should your environment look like? How should you present yourself? So explore those things also. Sorry, I just want to make sure that I'm pressing the right buttons here. Who should train as an instructor? So this is where we talk about, or I talk about the various, more obvious, as I suggested at the start, and maybe less obvious transferences of skill set. So who should train as an instructor? You, hopefully. But current practitioners would be the best place to start, because I think that's the most obvious. So for those of you that could be physiotherapists or osteopaths, chiropractors, massage therapists, Pilates lends itself really well to complementary therapies, treatments. So especially manual therapists like, for example, a physiotherapist or an osteopath, you have very, very likely referred your clients to somebody who is Pilates trained, because it's very likely that you'll firstly have an understanding of what Pilates is. You are very likely to feel that your client is in safe hands with regards to the qualification of which a Pilates teacher holds. So if you are practicing in that particular sort of circle or circles, then your transference of skill set is quite high. You are very much likely agreeing with the method of neutral spine. You're very much agreeing with engaging deeper core stabilizing muscles. These are things of which you are likely to practice within your own therapies, and therefore the transference of that skill set and the importance of those things are likely to be carried through to a Pilates teacher. And that's much the same osteopathy, chiropractors, massage therapists. You guys are likely to do the same. Career changes. Now, this is probably the one that we see the most, is this second section here, in the respect that career changes can come from various backgrounds, and transferable skill sets such as public speaking is, and what we've noticed is that we have a lot of performing arts students or graduates come through to our courses and can stand in front of a group quite easily and quite quickly, be able to deliver things promptly, concisely, clearly. Their communication skills are generally tend to be excellent. And the same as those that come from a background where public speaking is necessary. Their form of communication is often very, very good. And as such, you tend to find that people can stand in front of people, others, very quickly and without without anxiety, without becoming anxious. And we recognize at LPA that tends to be one of the barriers that we see the most. So encouraging learners to stand up in front of their group as early as possible is a practice that we very much encourage. Client-facing, customer service providers recognize the benefit of ensuring that the client is serviced, that they are provided with a good experience. And this goes back to what I suggested earlier with regards to knowing what good looks like, recognizing the details. They're often underplayed, and I tend to play them up in a lot of the courses that I deliver, because I believe that detail is important. I believe it is right, or is correct, to remember your client's name, to remember a little bit about them, and in particular the most important things, health concerns, any issues that they may have had leading up to that point. So the small details and the customer service very much carries through. Fitness professionals is one of which I don't think it gets overlooked. It tends to be a little bit more obvious. However, teaching someone to become a personal trainer is different to becoming a Pilates teacher. I often congratulate personal trainers, gym instructors, yoga teachers for coming up to the front of the room and teaching a class or teaching a Pilates class, because although they have a transferable skill set, they could be looking, and are very likely looking, for a different outcome. So, for example, personal trainers are often very used to working one-to-one with people. In teaching classes is something that can be quite difficult at times for a personal trainer. They have good communication, but could they teach 10 people instead of one person? That focus tends to be on the one person that they have as a client. But multiple people with multiple needs actually starts to challenge you in varied ways. So providing a very unique experience to a group of people kind of sounds like a bit of a paradox, really, doesn't it? But essentially in Pilates, that's what you're trying to provide. You are trying to provide various kind of unique services to each person in the room, because they have varied wants and needs. So it's extremely important to consider that. Yoga teachers, gym instructors, you might have group exercise experience, but as I suggested, it is a very different format of exercise. It kind of closely associates itself with the holistic department, but it is very much a case of delivering a different product. It's not yoga. We often have, not necessarily learners, but people in general, tend to confuse yoga and Pilates, much to the annoyance of some. Doesn't annoy me at all. We are under the holistic umbrella, so the skill sets are transferable, but they are different products. Joseph Pilates took what he wanted from yoga and he used it for his benefit and to teach others, but ultimately it's not yoga. But here is just a few things, a few of you, and some of you within the group that I'm talking to today, that you could, represent one of these three silos, as it were. Your journey to certifying. Okay, so LPA is one of many education providers, and I always sort of thank those that are in our courses. I meet many courses, even those that I don't teach. I want to find out a little bit more about them and what has driven them to LPA and what's driven them to become a Pilates teacher. But step one is explore. Find out what Pilates is and explore the teaching process. Pilates is not for everybody. And teaching is not for everybody. It's quite a difficult job in many respects. It's very fulfilling, as I suggested at the start, but it is very difficult. And I created an Insta reel not so long ago, and I explained this, is that there are some pitfalls to it, like any other job. And, teaching early morning, teaching late at night, teaching bank holidays, and essentially what was your leisure time has become somebody else's leisure time now. So you tend to spend a lot of time working while other people are at their leisure. So, explore Pilates, know what Pilates has, the goods and possibly the bads, because, it won't suit us all. Have a shop around. So look at various education providers. As I suggested, we're one of many. There'll be different price points, and there will be sort of varied things on offer. It could mean that some are unaccredited. So an unaccredited form of education means that it hasn't had the seal of approval from a governing body. We are governed by both YMCA awards. We are also governed by SIMSPA. SIMSPA sit as the umbrella accreditor. So essentially, being accredited by SIMSPA means that, and YMCA awards, that we are audited on a yearly basis to ensure that not only what we teach is of a high quality, but the way that we teach it. We like to consider ourselves to be a responsible training provider. So therefore, we have a standalone facilities that are equipped to work with learners on a daily basis. So therefore, we're not hiring premises from somewhere else. You're not going to be in a conference room, for example. You're going to be in one of our own facilities. So it's important that to both us and our accreditors that we are not only delivering the right education, but we have an environment that's inclusive to all of our learners. We teach to the national occupational standards, of which, if you are an accredited source of training, it means that essentially you're following a list of guidelines and criteria that Ofqual have set, that have put in place to ensure that you are taught what you should be taught as a Pilates teacher, which gives us the seal of approval. Because essentially, it's not against the law for somebody to create their own Pilates school and teach you their method. However, once going through that particular style of education, you'll reach the other end and find out, unfortunately, that you're you're unable, or it's more difficult to receive or to obtain public liability insurance, and it could be troublesome to gain employment. So my advice, strong advice, would be to migrate towards an accredited source of training. Step 3, begin the process. Understand the process of the course and begin navigating your way through that particular course. So what I mean by that is that we have lots of learners, and we encourage, we have a few learners of which may open their learning content a little closer to the course, shall we say. The earlier you learn more about the course as a whole, and when you subsequently purchase a course, you should begin that course as quickly as possible and understand what is necessary for you to pass that particular course or become successful. So navigating your way through the material might seem something to you at this stage that is frivolous. However, it's extremely important. The more you know about the course and the more you can navigate yourself through the course, the more you understand what's needed, and the pace can be set. So if your expectation is to become a Pilates teacher next week, yet you realize when you open the course that it's likely to take you 3 months, this is something that you need to know as early as possible. So understand what the course involves and also understand how to navigate your way through the course. That includes step 4, which is essentially the assessment process. And it sometimes surprises learners the number of assessments of which have been set by national occupational standards, because it's outside of the educator's hands what you're being assessed against. In our assessments, you will be assessed in various ways. You'll be assessed in theory, you'll be assessed in the practical, they'll be teaching a class. You'll also be assessed through worksheets and through the word escapes me, apologies, but projects. So you'll essentially be set a project to complete by a latter stage, and your work will then be submitted and also marked, and that's in the shape of a case study. So I make no apologies for assessing learners in varied ways, because that gives us a better understanding of how rounded that particular Pilates teacher is. Some might ask you to do a number of hours, to complete a number of hours teaching, or journal, for example. It's worth knowing that, because that often does change the lead up time to you becoming successful and completing the course. Section 5, qualified and teaching. So start teaching and you're transitioning. This is often the hardest phase, guys. Start teaching, transitioning from classroom to studio, because if you are super organized, then a lot of steps 1 to 4 are in your control. Step 5 is a little bit out of your control. But I firmly believe that step 1 helps you understand step 5, because within your exploration, you should have a better understanding as to what's out there, where you fit within this industry. And then number 5 essentially kind of funnels you into that particular environment. So if you found out within your exploration that you really don't want to go into the orthodox or classical format, then essentially step 5, you migrate towards those that are in the contemporary world, those that are heavily modifying Pilates to accommodate their client base, possibly those that need it. You have perinatal groups, for example. You have those the more mature clients with chronic issues, illnesses, musculoskeletal problems, etc. That might be the thing of which you migrate towards. But exploration step 1 really starts to guide you into step 5. The mat qualification, I've just kind of put some prompts here because these are often the sort of conversations that I have with learners. So what is mat to begin with? Or mat is the starting place of any good Pilates teacher. It's where we understand the origin of Pilates. There is a paradox that I'll talk to you about within the next slide, but mat is the original 34 exercises that Joseph Pilates constructed. Essentially, a number of those exercises are basic movement components or patterns, of which Joseph Pilates considered to be the sort of bedrock for his particular method. So the idea of mat Pilates is that it essentially involves a mat, some small props possibly, but it's you, the 4 corners of your mat, understanding the Pilates principles. It's where you'll be introduced to the extremely important principles that you'll carry through regardless of where you are about to take this. Mat is always the starting point, as I suggested, because it gives you a firm understanding of where Pilates comes from. So it gives you an understanding of who Joseph Pilates is, why he created the method, and the journey of which the method has gone through to today's format, or today's current climate, today's society. So because it has taken a journey and it's twisted and turned, and now we have a number of varied studios teaching different types of Pilates. But it helps you have a better idea as to where Pilates comes from. It's the proper or the correct prerequisite to a number of the other components to Pilates. So, for example, if you were to become a reformer teacher, or you wanted to specialize in apparatus, barrel, chair, tower, Cadillac, so on and so forth, to name but a few, then your mat training becomes extremely important, because not only will you see similar exercises on the apparatus, you'll have an understanding of the exercises that you will eventually come across. For example, there are a number of exercises within the chair repertoire and the barrel repertoire that you will have seen or seen a version of. Maybe towel would have been a better example than barrel, but exercises that you would have seen before within the mat repertoire. Here's the paradox, is that Joseph Pilates constructed the apparatus to help people to leverage the things of which they could practice to help them better themselves when it comes to mat principles. So in other words, they're instruments and apparatus that help provide the right tools and the right attributes so his clients could perform the mat-based exercises a little bit more effectively. The reformer certification. Now, it's often the number of hands, although they're not as high, or they're not as many as what they used to be. The reformer hands that go up when I ask the question, who would like to take this training into reformer, there are many that still go up today. So what is a reformer? A reformer is a very versatile piece of equipment of which you are highly likely to see many of those exercises of which you learn in mat be performed on a piece of apparatus. It tends to be the go-to after mat, and there is a reason for that. I think today's current climate with regards to the number of reformer studios of which are out there, this particular format lends itself extremely well to businesses that are open. They need reformer teachers, and as such, people tend to migrate towards this so they can get a return on investment quite quickly. Without going into the business model of reformer, you have less people in a room. Reformer was once upon a time, decades ago, taught sort of, as a single, as a duo, as a trio, small groups, but now we have the 10s, the 15s, the 20s upwards. So you could be faced with a huge group of people to teach, and as such, you will be financially rewarded, let's say, to that degree, whereas we could have 50 people in a studio, in a mat studio. So tend to the sort of valuable real estate of the reformer within a space tends to be a higher price point. So people tend to move towards reformer and teach reformer because financially they're rewarded higher than what they would be in a mat studio. What reformer has done for mat, though, is huge. The mat resurgence and the apparatus resurgence is incredible. So if your heart isn't in reformer, or that's not what you want to pursue, then you can, as you'll see very shortly, you can still have a place in the Pilates world without being reformer certified. Okay. I'm hoping I answered all of those questions. I think I did, but specializing as you grow, and this kind of ties into the previous slides, is a Pilates apparatus. Those are extremely important things when it comes to teaching Pilates. They lend themselves really well to any prerequisite that you have had previously. So mat, you could be mat and reformer. Now you could learn the chair, the barrel, the tower, fully comprehensive formats that LPA will be delivering very, very shortly. We'll be delivering them from next month. These are things that lend themselves extremely well. So there wasn't many places for a Pilates teacher to go after mat, and having Pilates apparatus means that you can essentially kind of reimagine what it looks like in your world of teaching Pilates. So, with regards to looking at the chair, for example, I was having this conversation with a learner not so long ago, in the respect that, you don't have to teach a class. You can teach one-to-one. It builds a repertoire, gives you an additional tool to use with your one-to-one client. And the same is true for tower, and the same is true for barrel. The more enhanced your repertoire becomes, the more tools that you have to be able to teach your one-to-one. So you may not want to focus on class or teaching large numbers simultaneously. Long-term conditions. Now, long-term conditions is something that is often overlooked, mainly because it's quite a high or heavy theory-based principle or based qualification. We have more and more comorbidities come into our studios, and comorbidities means that essentially there is more than one diagnosed medical condition that a client may have, and the common ones tend to be sort of lower back pain and that could be osteoporosis, it could be osteoarthritis, it could be diabetes, it could be a cardiac condition. But your scope of practice as a Pilates teacher does not cover you to teach comorbidities. We're now seeing more and more comorbidities in our classes. So it's very important that long-term conditions is considered. And to be honest with you, it's on the rise as we speak. The world is not becoming a healthier place. Unfortunately, it's becoming a sicker place. And as a result, people tend to have comorbidities, of which often feed from each other. Cardiac issues and lower back pain can feed off each other. So therefore, it's necessary to have the qualification to be able to work with those types of people. Perinatal certification. Perinatal certifications essentially, guys, are now on the rise. There it was, up until recently, a very small number of perinatal certified teachers out there. So there was rumors or strong stories of studios turning clients away because they weren't able to help perinatal clients. They were not able to help someone within their prenatal journey or their postnatal journey. We use the term perinatal now. So essentially, it's extremely important that we maintain inclusivity within our classes. And as such, we need to open our doors within a controlled fashion to those that have long-term conditions and to those that are perinatal clients. That we stand firm on at LPA, and as such, the perinatal numbers have increased hugely over the last 2 years. Now our courses can be full on a regular basis because we have people that are wanting to help the perinatal contingent. So building your career after qualifying. We're slowly coming to the end of this presentation, but I want to really sort of just open this out to those of you that could be qualified. For those of you who are qualified, you no doubt have done this first step. If you have not, please do so. This is find the right kind of insurance for you. There are many public liability or public indemnity insurance providers out there. Please ensure that you find something that works best for you, that fits your budget and that covers your qualification. Essentially, you are really, without oversimplifying this, you really are looking for those two things. Just as a heads up, you're finding now that a number of studios are looking for those that have public liability for up to 10 million pounds, because essentially they're looking for trainers of which have a suitable public liability that covers them if necessary, I suppose. I'm hoping that you'll never ever need that, but as a studio owner, it's important that they understand that you have the right type of public liability. So read the small print. There are a few that have changed recently. I won't go into a huge amount of detail, but there are a few that have changed or amended who they will accept to cover, but it's worth having an understanding of what is involved within your policy. Find your style. You can't teach without insurance, guys. So finding your style is number 2. And this goes back to exploration. So have an understanding of what brand you would prefer to be a part of. It's really important that you're representing a brand that is authentic to you. So find your style. Is it orthodox? Is it classical? Is it contemporary? You're likely to start covering from the offset. I would love to say to all of you, there will be a huge number of knocks on the door, or your phone will be ringing off the hook. But unfortunately, that's not the case. There are, remember, a number of Pilates teachers out there. So it's important to recognize that finding work is extremely important. So I do recognize that the return on investment may mean that essentially you will be working for an organization or a studio that you may not have chosen. They've chosen you. So please don't turn up that opportunity, because it's extremely important that you try and use and leverage this opportunity to gain as much teaching experience as possible. I often tell the story within, my courses and those groups that I meet, that I taught at leisure centers, I taught at David Lloyd clubs, and I wouldn't change a thing about teaching in those environments, because they can be quite harsh. It gives you broad shoulders and thick skin. So if you're able to meet the demands of those particular studios, then you'll be able to meet the demands of studios that are private studios or that are Pilates studios, because they're the fun places to work. People are there for you, to listen to you. It can be challenging teaching in different environments, but it's super fun teaching those people that are finally tuned in to what it is that you have to offer. So learning in harsher environments often helps you cut your teeth in a far sort of smoother environment, should we say. Build, diversifying, developing and building your brand. Don't stand still, guys. Ensure that you are continually trying to educate yourself, that you are continually trying to evolve, because the more diverse you are, the higher number of clients that you can teach, the more valuable you become to an employer. So continue to build your brand. Keep doing the little things right, because it's extremely important that professionalism plays a part in the Pilates world. So don't underplay turning up on time and being the person that a studio can rely upon. Yeah. I'm going to wrap this up very, very shortly, guys, for a little Q&A. I just want to sort of just quickly present this particular slide. I'm likely to get hooked with a cane very shortly. So keep learning, remain curious, add specialisms. So differentiate, as I suggested, with perinatal training, with apparatus, and be reliable, diligent, professional, and become a team player, because you're often going to be working in environments that I'm hoping that you're working in environments with like-minded people. Training with LPA, again, as I suggested earlier on, we are quality assured. So we deliver a large amount of accredited training. So essentially, for those that are looking to start their career, then we're available to help you start that career. We provide also forms of ongoing training within our training repertoire. So essentially, not everything is accredited, but our foundational training is accredited. And that moves into continued learning. Essentially, that portfolio boasts everything from mat teaching through to apparatus, through to workshops and masterclasses. We have blended learning. We try to keep as inclusive style of learning as possible. So we provide practical resources, theory resources online. So we essentially can deliver various education to various types of people. All of our tutors are qualified. So essentially, for those of you that are looking to join us, you have an understanding that all of our tutors are both Pilates qualified and qualified tutor assessors. Okay. Our studios are dedicated to LPA delivery. So London, York, and Belfast are they all belong to LPA. We don't hire facilities. Okay. And if you are very much looking to join us, then you can read our reviews. Guys, I think that's it from me. Here's the final slide. I believe that we are going to do a little Q&A for those of you that would like to stick around. Okay. I'm going to read the question and then I will answer the question. So it could appeal to many of you, and you could be also thinking of this question. Could it also be the case that more sick people are exploring Pilates versus more people becoming sick? Yes, that is quite possibly the case. I suppose you could say that. And I think that speaks very well to the fact that Pilates is versatile to be able to accept various different types of people. As you will quickly, and that might have been, that might be that seems like a very Pilates teacher question. But what we're finding is that a larger contingent are moving towards Pilates. That might speak volumes in the respect that Pilates teachers tend to have a weightier qualification than most. So when people migrate towards those particular types of teacher, they know they're in safe hands. I think when you look at, and this is a slightly abstract way of thinking about Pilates, but the original 34 exercises within their full expression, so the sort of the way of which Joseph Pilates wanted his method to be taught, it doesn't tend to lend itself very well to the perinatal contingent, which is paradoxical, really, when you think of it. But it shows you how far Pilates has come to becoming more diverse, accommodating, being able to deliver a contemporary format to those people that could be going through the perinatal journey. So I think you are correct in thinking that a number of people are moving towards Pilates as a source of sustainable practice. But I think we can all agree on the fact that the world is becoming a sicker place. And the World Health Organization explains that. And that's an unfortunate fact at the moment. So soon enough, those people will come and find a sustainable practice. So if you're not receiving them now within your studios, then you very shortly will. Next question. How good at Pilates do you need to be before you train? That's a question I get a lot. So questions with regards to that means that you're exploring the Pilates method and the possible career in teaching Pilates. If you are teaching the orthodox or classical style, then you would essentially need to be able to perform those particular exercises. It's important that you're able to do the things of which you are looking to teach, because essentially the method or the demonstration is extremely important. It's another format of communication. However, often now we have to modify and adapt our formats to a more contemporary style. The modified and adapted format, or the contemporary, as you're likely to know it by, is the largely taught method of Pilates, because most people can do or can participate within a modified and adapted format. And it goes back to what the previous question is, having a large number of people that have a musculoskeletal issue or a problem in some way, shape, or form. It's important to modify and adapt these formats so you're bringing people onto the mat and giving them realistic goals and targets. So if you are able to modify and adapt your method, then of course that gives you the sort of the benefit of I suppose, let me rephrase that, you're able to teach it, but you should be able to teach what it is or practice what it is that you're about to teach. So if you're teaching classical, that could be a principle of which you have to take yourself on your own journey and practice before delivering that yourself. Hello, and hello to you. What would you advise around opting for a mat-only training course first, or diving right in and committing to mat plus reformer? It's that's a tricky question in the respect that what I'm going to do first, because I'll have burning eyes on me, because essentially I'll have one hat, I'll take one hat off and put the other hat on. Taking my LPA hat off to begin with, it's important that you commit to what it is that you believe that you're able to that you're able to commit to something of which you can see yourself completing. So if teaching a smaller amount or teaching or committing to less means that you can financially and you can, both from a personal perspective, undertake a workload which is doable, which is manageable, I would go for mat only to begin with, even if you're unsure about a career in mat. Or if you're unsure about a career in Pilates, should I say, it's more important that you commit to something that you're able to undertake, opposed to have everything up front, unless you are absolutely adamant. Let me put my LPA hat on. Bundles tend to be the most cost-effective way of doing things. And it's the same as any other sort of resource, really. You know, when you pay upfront for something, then essentially you're committing to a larger product, which means that it's a more cost-effective way. So if you can absolutely see yourself teaching Pilates in the future, then the most cost-effective product tends to make the most sense. But if you're unsure of where you're going to see yourself in sort of, I don't know, 2 years time, 3 years time, that it's important for you to understand what mat involves and whether you enjoy teaching the Pilates principle before undertaking anything else. Wow, got lots of questions. I'm going to try and get through them quickly. Tips for sessions, planning one-to-one for returning clients, balancing number of the same exercise done each time with new ones to keep it fresh. Wow. Okay. So you're a Pilates teacher. It's important not to change everything, flip everything on its head, as many Pilates teachers want to keep it fresh. It's important to maintain its freshness, but it's also important to create a measurable outcome. If things are continually changed, then you can't measure that client's progress. So my advice would be is to change small and often. So change 1 to 2 exercises, but change 1 to 2 exercises with the forethought of creating consistency. And consistency is often overlooked. You're there to help someone reach their goals, opposed to continue to entertain them. And unfortunately, helping them reach their goals might mean that consistency helps you measure their progress and helps them measure their own progress. And if you have that client's buy-in once they get the progress, then they're going to likely want to come back and do more. I would suggest when you deliver exercises, deliver them with a purpose. Don't change an upper body exercise, for example, for a lower body exercise. Change it like for like, or change something that has a purpose, because again, it helps keep consistency. So if you tend to flip things around too drastically, it doesn't help you measure something. It becomes too diverse. And your client is now left in a position where they're getting freshness each time, but they're not getting progress. So my advice would be is to never exchange freshness for progress, because ultimately we are measured as teachers, as instructors, on progress. If they don't get in progress, they won't continue to pay for your service. How much of the training is focused on providing modifications? If you end up training in larger studios where people may have different needs, is that covered in the training? Well, various training providers to begin with will teach you the Pilates method in the way that they see fit. At LPA, we recognize that now a number of people are coming into studios of which we're now encountering more musculoskeletal issues, as I suggested earlier, more comorbidities, but certainly more musculoskeletal issues, and some to the respect where they'll find the position of the exercise quite uncomfortable. So when you're teaching a class, it's extremely important to have as many tools within your tool belt as possible, because there is a high likelihood that you'll have a plan A and need a plan B very quickly, because someone will walk into your studio and that plan A is now scuppered, because essentially there are things of which are contraindicated for that particular client, which means that that client can no longer participate within one or more exercises that you had within plan A. So plan B, modifying and adapting exercises to bring them down onto the mat, is extremely important. And it's one of which we would consider to be one of the most important messages within LPA's teaching. Can I quickly go over to make sure that I've answered that question in full. In larger studios with larger numbers of people, it's still very difficult. It's still very, very hard. Offering verbal cues to help people modify their own journey or manage their own journey is extremely important. And one trainer, and I won't take credit for this, suggested in the class that I was in the other day is that she said she will offer. And sorry, I'm paraphrasing here because I can't remember the exact phrase, but she will give options. You will make decisions. Something to that regard. And I thought that was a really good way. Giving options helps people make decisions and in which journey to take for them. So if you have 50 people in your class, it's very, very hard to create a unique environment for them. But encouragement to make their own decisions based on the information that you're giving them is extremely important. Hey, I have a lot of experience doing reformer, but very little in mat as a client. However, I'm keen to do the mat course. Do you think I should try and do more mat as a client before signing up to a course? Absolutely. It's a very easy answer. My advice would be to go. There is a number of people that join our courses without mat experience, strangely enough, and that's not a prerequisite, which seems a little bizarre, but there's not a perfect method of measuring that. So but I would highly recommend it, because it gives you a resource to sort of it gives you many experiences, and even experiences of which you won't consider to be maybe things that you would find enjoyable experiences. I still think experiences are still valuable. You still have references. What does that teacher say? How do they present themselves? How do they move around the room? How have they broken down something that's super complicated into something that's more simple? So those types of things you can always grasp from experiences. So my advice would be, yes, absolutely. Try as many different classes as you possibly can before making a decision. I really think that your mat practice will help strengthen your reformer practice. I honestly believe that. I completed my mat in-person course back in May, and I'm yet to book my FPA, which, for those who aren't going through the process, is final practical assessment. I've had a little pause since finishing the in-person course. I'm now getting back into the process of preparing to teach. Do you have any advice on getting into the flow with planning classes and building confidence with teaching? So planning and preparing a class, if you are mat trained, keep it balanced, keep it diverse. So for example, what I mean by that is, you'll know through going through your mat training, there are various motions of the spine. Make sure that all of the motions of the spine are included. Make sure there's a little lower body activity, and make sure there's a little upper body activity. Make sure there's a little unilateral, so left and right side activity. So keep it very balanced, and you'll be taught that. You'd have been taught that on the course. So those messages won't be anything, new to you. Advice would be is to construct something that is very basic. You can have as much the exercises are Swiss Army knives. And what I mean by that, I say that a lot, but what I mean by that is they're very versatile. So, a shoulder bridge, for example, is versatile. There's many, many people that can do a version of a shoulder bridge, or swimming, or swan dive, so on and so forth. So keep them sort of versatile. Do exercises of which are fairly simple. Teach as many different people that will allow you to teach them. And I and I joke with my groups. I'll say, teach your mom, teach your dad, teach your sister, teach your brother, teach your dog, teach your cat. Teach anything and anyone that will allow you to teach them, because any experiences are good experiences when you're trying to build your own self-confidence. So I would recommend try and say things as many times over, because it refines your language. It refines the way that you're teaching. Okay. All right. This is a very short and sweet one. So thoughts on hot mat. Okay. I'm yet to be convinced. I first of all, my principle is as my own personal principle is, if it helps people move and they can enjoy it and it's safe, it's a safe practice, go ahead and do it. Because I don't want to be the movement police. It's important. Society doesn't move enough. So it's important that I take a stance, whereas if it's safe and if you enjoy it, go do it. Because it's really important that I encourage as many people to move as possible. I am not sure of, I'm not convinced of the benefits of hot yoga, of hot Pilates. Certainly not the long-term benefits, other than the benefits of which you would receive during a normal Pilates class. So it is limited. I have limited experience in it, and I want to sort of, maybe should have inserted that a little earlier, but I want to say that I'm coming from a non-hot Pilates participant, but a lot of what I teach is evidence-based. So evidence-based practices need evidence, and I'm yet to receive that. So maybe if there is a link to evidence, set me up with that link. But I don't see any further benefits than the regular format. You mentioned the importance of starting the material as soon as you can. Since I can't start the digital materials until the kids are back in September, where can I give it full-time focus? Is there any recommended reading material I could get started over the summer? We have provided some Instagram posts recently over to recommended books, over to recommended literature. Okay, there's not tons and tons, strangely enough. Certainly nothing that I would endorse. But if you visit our Instagram page, one of the most recent posts have been in the various literature of which you can read in the lead up or to supplement your learning. There are some really small modules that don't take a huge amount of time. So even though the kids are back in September, I have kids myself. I know that focus can be difficult. I would highly suggest that you tackle as much as you possibly can. If the module that you're about to attack or about to embark upon looks to become too big, go to the next one, because it essentially doesn't need to be done in order. There are some that have to be, and you'll find that out quite quickly, because it won't allow you to move on to the next component. But for example, if you have little time, don't start the anatomy and physiology straight away, because that really does need your attention. But there are other modules that can be broken down into sort of 20-minute chunks. There's lectures that I deliver that could be just simply broken down to the time that you have available at that specific time. So keep going. Please try and chip away at it the best you can. But there is some reading resources or some resources that you'll find within our Instagram page. Hello, thank you for all the info. You are very welcome. How long is the in-person course for Mat Pilates? Number of weeks, days. For the in-person component is 6 days. But it's very important to recognize that the course is not 6 days. So the in-person component is delivered during the week or the weekends, and it can change depending on obviously what's available. I think is probably the biggest barrier. But we have weekend courses, we have weekday courses. Nevertheless, they are all 6 day in person. It's important to be there for 6 days because essentially they are very different day to day. So there is that caveat. I hope that answered that question. I'm not based in the UK. Can I still do a Pilates course with LPA? That's a difficult one because all of our courses are in person. We don't deliver anything online, and there are some subtleties, lots of subtleties in teaching Pilates. And often those subtleties we highly believe should be taught in person. So we like to give you real-time feedback with regards to your teaching practice, of which it's important for us to be there. So it's important for us to see how you teach so we can give you pointers and the things of which you will need to know for your final practical assessment, and also recommendations. So, let's see if we can lift your voice a little to get to the back of the room. Those are the sorts of things in which subtleties tend to get lost on online learning. So with regards to other courses, we deliver other formats of training, however, not the mat based. If you are not currently a Pilates teacher, we don't currently deliver the mat based, but we have 3 studios, one in York, one in London, and one in Belfast. So all easy to get to. So if you do plan a visit to the UK, then we have 3 studios for you to choose from. How many Pilates sessions a week would you recommend for someone to see value? It really is dependent on what it is that you're currently doing. So if you are an extremely active person and a lot of your week is taken up, you are a highly active runner, then it's down to the amount of time that you have to sort of to devote. If you are a seasonal competitive athlete, then you're going to be spending most of your time in the world of competitive sports. So, during off season, if you are a competitive athlete, I would say, well, in this case, you can ramp up the amount of times of which you do Pilates. So you can do Pilates 3 times a week, for example. You could even do Pilates if it's ebbs and flows 4 times a week. If you are a competitive athlete and you are a runner, for example, then the beauty of Pilates is that you can use Pilates twice a week. You can use Pilates for 45 minutes, or you can use Pilates for 30 minutes. So it depends on the individual. If there was no barriers to you using Pilates as a practice and you are currently not doing anything else, I would suggest using Pilates 3 times a week. Pilates classes are often sort of 45 minutes to an hour, but that's not to say that you have to use that duration. I'm not sure of any evidence. I'm not sure of even the person that suggested it needed to be an hour's long. We just as a society decide it should be an hour's long class. But if it's half an hour and you receive the benefit and you're just starting out, I would often opt for the lower duration, higher frequency. So half an hour, 45 minutes, 3 times a week, building up to an hour-long class 3 times a week. So start low and build upwards from that. That is if you're not currently doing anything else at the moment. And you'll notice the gains pretty quickly. Again, it really is dependent on the person. If you are building from scratch, you will notice the difference straight away. If you are an athlete, for example, it might take a little bit of time to get used to it. It might take a little bit of time for you to see the difference. And that's a strange, again, a paradoxical way that the body works, but it is really relative to the person that's doing it. What is the difference between LPA's Reformer and Mat bundle and the Studio Ready bundle? Okay, so Reformer and Mat bundle. Could I just ask Christian? The Studio Ready bundle involves Mat. Thank you. I knew there was an extra component to it, but I couldn't. You put me on the spot. Thank you very much for putting me on the spot. Lisa, that one's to you. What is the difference? The perinatal is included within the Studio Ready bundle. And Studio Ready means that essentially when you hit your studio, you're able to, both teach mat, reformer, and obviously perinatal, which is extremely important if you are looking to work in a studio. It means that you can accommodate that perinatal client. So that's the difference. Thank you for asking that question, because I've now learned something as well. With the one-to-one class plans, would you still include 3 levels of exercise or focus on 1 level each time? Every single time you should offer progressions and regressions, and agree upon them, offer them. The client might give you a little feedback with regards to how they physically are feeling. No Pilates session is the same, because the person walking into your Pilates class is going to be different each time. I've worked with various people in various capacities. People are people. They're like you. You have good days, you have bad days. So it's important to train the person that's in front of you. And that person who took the progression on Monday might be taking the regression on Wednesday. So it's extremely important that you come with options, because you're likely to be teaching, although the same person, their outlook is going to be very different Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Okay. Favorite upper body exercise for Matt. Okay, so can I include swan dive or swimming in that? Because if I can, that's my favorite upper body exercise for Matt. Favorite, if I'm going to be really pressed for one, I like swimming, in the basis that it's an early functional based exercise. Not sure whether or not Joseph Pilates knew that he was stumbling across functional exercise, but the cross-sectional movement that swimming creates is extremely functional. So if I'm going to be pressed, I would like to say swimming, because of its versatility and its functionality. With the market getting more saturated, how would you advise someone build a personal brand that differentiates from others? The diversity makes a big difference. So as I suggested earlier on, long-term conditions and perinatal give you that diversity to become more inclusive, because essentially learning to teach more of the same method is not necessarily a wise choice, in the respect that learning how to teach the same method but more ways is not necessarily accommodating people that have particular issues, illnesses, conditions, etc., etc. So we're looking for more bandwidth here. So differentiating with bandwidth helps you to open your door, become more, to help you diversify, to be a more versatile trainer, I think is more important in this day and age. Which might mean sometimes you have to step outside of the Pilates world, so it's maybe it is a necessity to focus on something that enables you to focus on a particular group of people. Menopause is another. We don't deliver that, but if you are teaching that particular type of client, then I think it's really important that you seek education in that world, and that's going to help you diversify a little bit more. So I think if I could use the word bandwidth, bandwidth helps you diversify. So the different types of clients that you can accept within your clients, or that you're able to work with, will help you to differentiate than just teaching on another piece of kit, if that makes sense. Are in the personal training assessment days flexible, or do you have to stick with the date that you sign up to? Okay, they're not flexible, unfortunately. We have a number of learners, and we can only accept a number of learners in the studio at any one time. From a product perspective, so if you were within our studio, and some providers do this, if you were in a studio that can hold 20 people, but there's 30, it becomes very uncomfortable. The wait for the toilet becomes large, long, and uncomfortable. And from a health and safety perspective, it's not something that we can adhere to. So there are some challenges that we have with the size of our studio and the number of people that we could admit in any one time. We ask that you sign up to a course of which you can make a majority of the days. We're going to shoot for all of them, because I'd hate for you not to be able to attend a day and miss a day of which is extremely important in being successful. So attending all days means that you've got a higher chance of becoming successful. But if you have to miss a day, we will help you catch up in some way, shape, or form, and so are likely your peers as well. So unfortunately, we're not flexible on the days. It's something that you do have to sign up to. We do accept the fact that a learner might miss a day. However, it's something that when you go into signing up, then I would suggest select a course of which you're able to make a majority of the days. Yeah, I'm really sorry about that. Wow, that was a lot of questions. I'm really happy to answer them all, and as you probably can work out, for those that are still with us, I could pretty much go on all day. Yeah, thank you. And that was all done without a drink of water. So I'm going to go away and douse myself in water now. Thank you everybody for participating. You know, as we haven't delivered this before, we were unsure of how this was going to go, and the participation was outstanding. I never thought that we'd have this many people and this many questions. So thank you for your participation. Otherwise, it's just me speaking at you. Should we end it there? Yeah. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you for the rounds of applause. There's been plenty there. And I hope if you are in studio, please make yourself known to me that you attended this, and then ask me any questions. Be happy to answer them. Thanks again, guys. Bye-bye for now.